Hey folks, this is Matthew Zachary, and before we get to the show, I wanted to tell you about another show from Offscript Media called The Cancer Mavericks. It's an 8-part deep dive narrative into the very story of cancer survivorship and the movement that started in the United States 50 years ago. This is not a podcast about the disease of cancer, it's a podcast about the people who made it better for all of us. Please search for The Cancer Mavericks wherever you listen to your podcasts and follow so you don't miss an episode. Thank you.
Welcome to the FUMS Now podcast show, where you'll gain information, inspiration, and motivation for living your best life with multiple sclerosis. Find us online at FUMSnow.com. I'm your host, Kathy Reagan Young. My guest today is Dr. Gretchen Hawley, a doctor of physical therapy and a multiple sclerosis certified specialist. After graduating from Simmons University in Boston, Massachusetts, she developed an MS physical therapy program alongside two of the city's top MS neurologists. Dr. Hawley utilizes the concept of neuroplasticity in her online MS wellness program, the MSing Link, to help her clients reduce fatigue, get stronger, improve their balance, and walk better. Her members feel more energized, empowered, and like they have more control over their life with MS. She recently added podcast host to her resume. This is her third visit here at FUMS. Hey there, Dr. Gretchen. Welcome back again.
Thank you for having me back.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. You're one of my faves. So as I referenced, you're the world record holder because this is your third, you're a three-peater. This is your third visit. So I just want to let everybody know that was episodes 22 and 74. I'll link to those episodes in the show notes too. But anyway, welcome back.
Thank you. I'm honored to be the world record holder.
You are the world record holder. Call Guinness. Yeah. So I have to tell you that your name and your program keep coming up as I'm talking to MSers lately. I mean, you have really made a splash in our community. Everybody adores you and you're really making a difference for a lot of people. So why don't you tell everybody about the MSing Link?
Yeah. So it is the program that I developed so that I could essentially just help more people with MS. And it's funny because it initially started to help the clients that lived nearby. I was an MS specialist and physical therapist in the Boston, Massachusetts area, but there's very few MS specialists there. So most of my clients were coming from an hour away or some even 2 hours away. And what I was finding was that they were so fatigued by the time they got to me, just from getting ready for the appointment, getting dressed, maybe even showering that day, getting there, that the session wasn't as effective. Then they had to drive back home. And just the fatigue from all of that would last them, 2 to 3 or 4 days. So I started brainstorming ways that I could help. And the MSing Link in this online version was what I came up with. But what I didn't realize is because it's online, the whole world can access it. So It's a way that people virtually can learn what I would normally teach in my physical therapy sessions for my clients with MS. So it's a lot of MS specific strengthening exercises, stretching, balance, walking. And then it's called the wellness program because I've added in guest speakers where we hear from MS neurologists and other MS experts. We have research updates, yoga classes. So we've expanded to adding a lot of content in there.
That's so cool. So I want to break that down so much. First of all, this was pre-COVID. I mean, this is brilliant the way this worked out. But I remember, so it must have been maybe we talked before you even started this, because I remember sitting on my sofa and we were texting back and forth ideas for the logo for MSing Link.
Yeah, it was. We were, I actually, I don't know why, but recently I just looked through old Instagram posts of mine and I saw that 3 years ago on September 8th, so 3 years ago, was the first time that you and I had a podcast episode where I was your guest. And I remember vividly that conversation. One of the things we were talking about was the soon to be launch.
Yeah.
And this program will be 3 years old in this December. So in a few months from now. So yeah, it was just before the launch.
That's so cool. And obviously pre-COVID, but boy, has this worked out nicely. I mean, other people are just figuring out that they can take their stuff online, and you've been doing it. So it's such a gift to so many people. And like you said, you maybe didn't consider it, but I mean, anybody from anywhere in the world can get to this stuff, right? And benefit from it.
Right. As of right now, the last time I checked, we had MSing Link members in 12 different countries, which is just so cool.
That is so cool. I love that. Okay. So is it like a subscription model, like a membership? Do you join? It's like joining a gym, right?
Yeah. So there's a monthly membership as well as semi-annual and annual. And one of my favorite things about it is also the accountability. So not only do you get access to all these exercises and things that can help with your walking and stair climbing and all these activities, but also the accountability to hold you consistent and on track with them, which I think is a huge, huge piece that a lot of people don't think as much about.
Yes, 100%. I always say accountability is the missing link. Get it? In a lot of things though, because especially like I work from home, I'm home alone. I have intention of working out and I got nobody watching me. So sometimes it doesn't happen. But I always say like, Weight Watchers works because you have to get up in front of everybody and weigh in every week. So there's that accountability and you're like, oh, I can't go there and not have lost any more or gained, God forbid. Right. So I think accountability is huge and it's a big motivator. So kudos to you for doing this. I know I'm not kidding. Your name just keeps coming up and coming up. So you're doing lots of great things for our community and thank you again. So I happen to know that heat intolerance and seasonal temperature changes on the body are specialty topics of yours. So let's talk about that a bit. It's mid-September as we're recording this. And oh my God, it's still intensely hot here in Southern Virginia and heat kills me. I'm cog foggy, I'm fatiguey, I'm achy. I basically just feel like shit when it's hot and humid. And I know most people with MS share this side effect of, heat intolerance. Why is that? Why does heat affect us so much?
Yeah. And one reason that I love talking about this is because a lot of people know that they have heat intolerance or that they feel worse during temperature changes or seasonal changes, but they don't know how easy it is to actually fix it and reverse it. So
a hot shower. I mean, literally, when I was diagnosed, I remember that vividly. My doctor saying, "Kiss hot showers goodbye." Like you can't do that anymore. He was not wrong.
Yeah, and it's different for everyone too. So for some people, that's a big one. For other people, hot showers are fine, but hotter temperatures outdoors, that completely changes the game. Yeah. So truly, what heat intolerance is anything that causes your core temperature to rise by at least half of a degree, which is not much at all.
Not much. Yeah.
No. So that could be a hot shower. It could be humidity. It could be the barometric pressure. It could be exercise. It could be stress. A lot of people forget that stress makes our bodies warm and our bodies respond to that. So there's lots and lots of different things that can cause
a fever, illness.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And also, especially this time of year, depending on where our listeners are living, seasonal changes can also cause very similar symptoms to heat intolerance and or cold intolerance. So here, as you mentioned, it's still pretty warm here. Let's just say, theoretically, let's say tomorrow it drops to 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So much cooler. A lot of people will tell me, oh my gosh, I would assume that I'd feel great because it's so much cooler, but I'm not. Today's a bad day for me. My fatigue is worse or my strength, whatever it might be. Yeah. And that change, that seasonal
change, right? Yeah. It's not so much the temperature, right? It's I've noticed that too. Barometer too, the barometric pressure really affects me as well. It's so strange.
Yes.
Well, aren't we lucky? We're just little barometers. So what do you tell your patients to do about heat intolerance? Like, I'm looking for some tips and tricks here, please.
Yeah. So the first thing that I always share, because this is the easiest and quickest strategy, is to sip ice cold water, not room temperature water.
Cheers. I just don't have ice in here, so it doesn't make noise, but I always have my cold water right here.
Yeah. And it has to be cold. If it's room temperature or, even just lukewarm, it doesn't have the same effect. So sipping, and it just needs to be small sips. I talked about this, recently, where a lot of people who have bladder issues, whether it's incontinence, frequency, urgency, the last thing they want to do is sip water. Right. But keep in mind that for heat intolerance, I literally mean like the smallest sip possible, just lots of tiny, tiny little sips. So it won't really affect your bladder, but it will cool your core temperature down. So that's my favorite. Everyone can do that. You don't need to purchase anything. Yeah. So that's one of my favorites. But then there are also strategies of, first and foremost, figuring out what's causing it. If it's stress, doing something to manage the stress, meditation, taking 5 deep breaths, something. If it's exercise, cooling products is one of my favorites. Or if it's the temperature outside, cooling products. So there's lots of, there's vests, there's wraps, there's wristbands, there's hats, there's shirts, there's so many different things.
There are now. There weren't, 13 and a half years ago when I was diagnosed, there weren't. And what was available and what has been available.
Do you remember how bulky those first vests were?
Sister, let me tell you, I think I've tried every one of them. I felt either like an umpire or I was smuggling drugs or a bomb. I'm confident that's what I looked like. And they were ugly, huge, uncomfortable, and really they may have cooled me a bit, but it didn't last long. And it was just uncomfortable. But I know you and I have both, well, I shouldn't say I know that. I think that you and I both advocate to use the undercool vest from Thermapparel. That it was a game changer for me, 100% game changer for me. It is hot and humid in Southern Virginia in the summer. And I was really missing out on a lot. Honestly, I love working out in the yard. I love gardening or just going for a walk or just hanging outside. Right. And I couldn't do it. And I just didn't do it for the longest time. I mean, I tried the big umpire vest, but they were awful. But when I found this, that thing just fits so snugly. You can't even tell when I'm wearing a t-shirt. You can't even tell I've got anything on.
Yes.
And it literally keeps me nice and cool for up to 3 hours. The really interesting thing, and I don't mean to be doing a commercial for them other than to just say it's awesome. It has been a game changer for me. But what I noticed was I didn't feel like I was cool when I was I wasn't chilly. It wasn't until I got in that I really noticed the difference, because for me, I didn't really notice I was necessarily horribly hot until I got in too. And then I couldn't cool down. And then that was the problem. So it's like, I come in and I go, okay, I'm cool. Like I don't need to cool down. Like I maintained this. And I think that's the difference too. Like you don't have to be chilly. You just need your core temperature not to be going up.
You just need it neutral. Yeah.
Yeah.
And anytime any of my clients have any symptom that starts increasing, the first thing I tell them to do is ask themselves, is there the potential that I could be overheating right now? Because you likely won't feel hot.
Yeah, you don't feel it. It's weird.
No. Yeah. So that's why my go-to for the first thing anyone should do ever is sip ice cold water. If you are someone that has heat intolerance, or if you're someone with cold intolerance, sip warmer water, because you never know. Your core temperature could be rising by 0.5 degree and you didn't know it.
Right.
So, but yeah, one of my favorite things, as you just mentioned, let me back up. I've been an MS specialist for 6 years now. And even 6 years ago, it was hard to find a cooling vest that wasn't bulky and didn't weigh 5 pounds.
Yes.
So yeah,
the workout.
Yeah, absolutely. My 2 favorite things about it is A, it's lightweight, because that was really hard to find. And B, no one knows you're wearing it. Yeah. So many of the other vests around, people know you're wearing it. Whereas this goes under your clothes. And you're right in that as I put it on, I immediately feel cooler.
Yeah.
if you guys are ever at a conference or event and they have a booth there, go try it on. You'll immediately feel the temperature. Yeah.
Yeah. I went to a friend's daughter's graduation this year, and it was one of those beastly hot evenings. I mean, they tried to make it later so that, it wouldn't be horrible, but it was still horrible. But I was nice and cool because I wore my vest. But the funny part was, I mean, you literally couldn't tell I had that on, but the packs go in the back that cool you. And as people would hug me, I would feel them like pat me down and be like, what the hell is what is that? So you can't see it, but it's there and you can feel it. And people were like, what is that? So I, I did a little explaining from the hugs, but
yeah. And I love that without saying it, you just mentioned that you were being proactive. And that is key when it comes to temperature changes, heat intolerance, or just seasonal changes, is being proactive. If you know that there's a possibility that it's going to be warm or a possibility that your core temperature could rise, go ahead and sip ice water or put a cooling device on.
Right. I love that. Yeah. Because we're our own best advocate for ourselves, right? We need to be, and we need to be taking care of ourselves, and thinking ahead really can make a big difference.
Yes.
It's easier to, I think, stay cool than get cool. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So if you can, I try and put that on a little bit before I go out, just so that when I step out, it's not like I'm already there. Like my core temperature is like, we got this. Go ahead and go out there. We're good.
Yeah. And that way, even if your core temperature does rise, just let's say it's a hot day out or you're exercising, if it started off at a lower point, it might still rise, but it's still neutral or below.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. The doors to the Patients Getting Paid membership community are now wide open. This is a community of people with chronic illness learning to find and create flexible remote work that accommodates their health. I call us chronicpreneurs. There are trainings, coaching calls, networking opportunities, co-workings, and a ton of resources. Want to take better care of yourself and still generate an income? Join us at patientsgettingpaid.com. Okay, so neuroplasticity. First of all, that's just a fun word to say. And this is one of your specialties too. So I love this. It's so fascinating to me. Can you share a bit of the science behind neuroplasticity?
Yeah. So neuroplasticity is the ability of our brains to either strengthen the neural pathways that already exist or create new ones. So basically,
amazing.
Yeah. Any movement that we have, even if it's moving our fingers or lifting our ankle or bending our knee, any movement, what happens is our brain first either has a reflex to move that body part, or we have the thought of bend my knee or open my hand, whatever it is. So your brain first has to have that thought or reflex. Then you have nerves that run from that part of your brain all the way down the spinal cord and the other nerves in there, and goes to the muscle that causes the action of that muscle to move and that body part moving. So with MS, the difficulty is in the nerves. So the brain usually has the reflex or the thought to move, but that pathway doesn't work great. There's demyelination. Right. So sometimes the pathway is still there. It's just not as strong because you've been overcompensating with other muscles. So in that case, we can strengthen the original pathway. But in other cases, there's just too much demyelination, and your brain will reroute itself. It will try to find a new pathway to make that body part move. Yeah.
Our bodies are so freaking amazing. Every time I learn something new like this, I'm just like, oh, all hail the body. That is,
yes,
we are cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really, really cool. So how do you use that neuroplasticity in your practice?
The number one thing and way that you can get it to work for you is by repetition. So there are specifics of, which exercises will it be? How will you do the movement? Make sure it's easy enough for you. But the number one thing is doing the exercise for the movement that you're looking to improve over and over and over again, as many times as you can for the next 10 years. And eventually, so in some people, will start to feel improvements tomorrow. They just needed to know what to do. They just needed to wake up that neural pathway to remind it how it should be working. Other people might notice improvements in a few months or in 6 months or a year or 2 years, which is why I say 10 years, that sounds daunting.
Just keep going.
Yeah. But my point being, just keep going over and over and over again, even if, and especially if there's little to no movement. I've had some people, let's use foot drop because I know that's a common one.
Yeah.
I have had many clients who have pretty bad foot drop where maybe it lifts a little bit or not at all, but they feel the muscles twitching, but it doesn't lift at all. When I told them to practice lifting their toes, they would say, "Oh, I can't do it. So what's next?" And they would almost just write it off as something that they shouldn't do. But based on neuroplasticity, every single time you attempt to lift your toes, that's a time that your brain is trying to find that pathway to work. So if you tried 5 times to lift your toes, your brain tried 5 times to get a pathway to work.
Wow. And that's how you build it back, right? Build back better. I guess that's probably the same thinking that informs athletes, right? Like that muscle memory. I mean, this is nerve pathways, but the same idea, like repetition so that you don't even really have to think about it. It just, when you go to do it, you just do it, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Very cool. I wonder, while you were talking about foot drop and lifting your toes, how many of our listeners were lifting their toes like I was? I noticed that my toes were going up. Yay.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of my favorite exercises because you can do it anytime, anywhere. You can do it if you're sitting. You can do it if you're standing. You can do it if you're lying down. You can do it anywhere. And every time you do that, your brain is either strengthening the pathway that's working already or finding a new pathway.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool. Okay, let's talk about exercise because that's who you are. But so many people ask me what they can do to help their fatigue. Literally daily, I get questions about this. What do you do? How can you help this fatigue issue? And I always say the same thing, and it is 100% counterintuitive. But for me, exercise helps. And I can't tell you how much that pisses me off because I am not a lover of exercise. Dr. Gretchen, I will cop to that truth. But it really helps me. And it's so counterintuitive. The last thing I want to do is get up and move. I'm so exhausted. But honestly, if I can get my fat ass off that sofa and make myself walk, even just around the room a little bit, I begrudgingly feel better. I know that sounds really weird, but I'm like, I don't want to. I do want to realize the benefits of exercise, and then I don't because that means I have to do it more. But I really do. Honest to goodness, I am not as fatiguey if I am consistently exercising, and I hate to admit it. But do you find others say the same thing?
There is actually research proving that light exercise can reduce fatigue. And you're right, it does sound counterintuitive.
100%.
One thing that I hear a lot is, how do you expect me to exercise? I'm already fatigued. I can't even start exercising. Or what I'll hear a lot is, well, when I exercise, I get so fatigued.
Yes.
And so the trick is, and any recommendation I ever give is just what I find from research. And so I'm just sharing that. So what research has shown is that it has to be light to moderate exercise. And oftentimes we do at least moderate, if not a little bit more. And keep in mind too, moderate is different for everyone. For some people, moderate might be walking. For other people, moderate might be sitting down, marching their legs.
Yeah. Or that toe lifting thing you just talked about. Yeah. It's funny you say the word moderate because last weekend I went to visit my daughter in college and we decided to have a fun day and go for a hike. And she lives in Harrisonburg, Virginia, which is very mountainous. And I said, girl, A, I have MS, and B, I'm really out of shape right now because I don't do a lot in the heat of the summer. And my treadmill broke. So I just got a new treadmill though. I will say that. But anyway, so we found a trail that was supposed to be flat and it was around a beautiful lake. And it was like, I don't know if it was even a mile, and it would have been just lovely. But we got on the wrong freaking trail.
Oh no.
oh my God, this was the hard, there's no way I could have done. And I would not, had I known what this was, there's no way I would have done it. My daughter says the same thing and she's 18. We were climbing over like downed trees and there was rock scrambles and everything. It was a beautiful vista when we got there, but I couldn't believe, and I kept saying, this is easy. It was marked as easy. When are we going to get to the lake? When is it going to flatten out? Anyway, we got on the wrong trail and it was great. It was Humpback Rock, if anybody wants to look that up in Virginia, but it's actually called moderate. And I don't even think I'd call that moderate. That's what my point was like. This is moderate. This is hard. I would never do, I would never do a hard because to me, this is hard. So to your point, some people call things moderate that I call hard.
Absolutely. And that's such a good point of it needs to be moderate for you or in this case, light to moderate.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't feel light, well, then go even lighter. Yeah. Or, don't think of light to moderate as what society might think light to moderate is.
Right.
Yeah. And it's oftentimes because it needs to be light for some people, it just means sitting up tall in your chair. So unsupported, meaning you're not sitting in the back of your chair.
Sitting straighter now.
And maybe you just punch your arms forward.
Yeah.
And so it's just light, nice and slow, but one arm forward than the other. Or maybe you add a twist. So it's still just punching your arms forward slowly, but you're adding a twist. Or seated, reclined, there's so many light exercises that you can do. I actually, for the MSing Link, I just recorded a video, I think it was a month or two ago. And the title of it is Exercises to Do in Bed. Because you can exercise in bed in a light way, and that can help reduce fatigue. So there's always something you can do. But essentially, research is proving that to reduce either primary or secondary fatigue, light to moderate exercise is effective.
Yeah. And is that where you usually start with people? Your clients? You just start with the light exercise. Just
light to moderate. And then see how your body feels. So starting with light to moderate, and then how did you feel? Were you sore at all? Were you fatigued at all? If so, how intense and what was the duration? And then we work our way up from there.
I love that. That's so good. And I just want to really reiterate my experience, which is I don't enjoy exercise, but I find it very helpful. So I want to say to everybody else out there, you may not enjoy it, but honestly, it will help you. It'll help fatigue. It helps cog fog. I mean, it helps with, we have a lot of issues sleeping, and I really find such a huge difference. If I have done any movement that day, I am sleeping better. If I haven't, I'm not sleeping well. So it really is so important. So good on you. So, okay. Thank you for all that. You have a new podcast and a free 5-day MS strength challenge. So let's unpack that first. Tell me about the podcast.
Yeah. So it's really funny because again, just over 3 years ago is when I was on your podcast. And even as little as 6 months ago, I wasn't sure that it was something. I knew that it was a big platform that a lot of people were utilizing, but I didn't really have the idea until maybe 3 or 4 months ago when people kept mentioning it to me and mentioning that they were on and they like hearing audio tips. Whereas so far I've just been on my MSing Link, of course, but also Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, but that's all visual as well. And I've been receiving a lot of feedback that they just want to listen. They don't really need a whole video on it. And that combined with people asking me questions that require a longer response, where it's more than just what I can fit in a 1-minute Instagram video.
Right.
So that was the point where I was like, okay, let me look into this a little bit more. So this is only the second week. We launched 1 week ago.
Congratulations. What's the name of the podcast?
It's called The MSing Link. So it's spelled the same way as my online program.
And we can find that anywhere, any place you get your podcast. Okay, great. Yes. So good.
So it's really exciting. So it's a combination of me having solo episodes where I just educate and answer the questions that people ask me on a daily basis. And then I also bring in guests, which has been awesome. So we've had 5 guests so far. So we had Dr. Boster as our MS neurologist. We had Matt Embry, Ardra Shepard, Mindy Eisenberg and B. Ailing. So I'm trying to find speakers from very different realms, yet that still can help people with MS. So it's been a really exciting launch.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. And the other thing I find about audio too is it's nice if you're not feeling well. And, sometimes we have optic neuritis. And for all those reasons, it's nice just to lay there and listen sometimes.
Yes.
And also I listen to podcasts like if I'm driving to the store or it's just, or those days that I can actually walk when it's not too hot out. It is nice. And it's nice to, bring that along with you, bring your MSing Link along with you.
It's been fun too, because as soon as I had the thought of, okay, wait, this might actually be something that I do. I'm a huge believer in anything that I create, even if it's an Instagram post or Facebook or YouTube, it's for the people that are watching it. So like I'll create the content for my audience. And so the way that I do that is I ask a ton of questions. So I've been polling my audience on Instagram and Facebook and email for maybe 2 or 3 months now, just asking questions like, how long do you want the episodes to be? What day of the week do you want it to launch on? What guests do you want to hear from? So everything about this podcast came from people with MS, just telling me what they prefer. I voted. So that's been cool. Yeah, you did. I appreciate that.
I have voted. Yes, absolutely. Well, I love that you take us into consideration first and foremost, and that's who you're building the content for. That's awesome. Okay. So the strength challenge, tell us about that.
Yeah. So I found that there are some preliminary things to get out of the way first before people start an exercise program. So the first is neuroplasticity, as we reviewed today. It's just so important to understand that deeply enough where you could explain it to someone else. And the reason for that is because neuroplasticity is the reason that someone with MS actually can get stronger, improve your walking. So knowing what it is and knowing how to make it work for you and your goals is so important. So this 5-day strength challenge is geared towards getting the information you need to then start a program. So we review neuroplasticity. Each day has its own topic. We also review functional exercise, how to exercise based on what your goals are. We touch on accountability and consistency. So a different topic each day, a slight homework assignment that's optional, but you can fill that out each day. And it's meant to prepare you with enough information where if you already have exercises, you can now do your exercises more effectively because you'll know how to utilize them.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And if not, well, then there's the MSing Link, there's other, programs, but it's geared towards helping you figure out the basics first. Without that, any program you do won't be as effective.
Yeah. And that just reminded me of what I have found over the years very effective with my MS, which was like envisioning, or I was going to say guided imagery, but it's not guided. It's just guided by my head. But I know years ago, when I first had my first major flare and I was in bed basically for 6 weeks, I felt so done too. I was pissed off that my body was doing this to me. And anyway, I didn't know what I could do, but I started picturing the lesions on my brain. And back in the day, there was this commercial with scrubbing bubbles. And so in my head, I was picturing scrubbing bubbles, scrubbing off my lesions. And it really helped. I felt like I was doing something. And so in the same way, I'm thinking, if you understand neuroplasticity, for instance, as you were talking about pulling up your toes and how that your nerves are connected, from your brain all the way down your spine, I'm thinking, I'm picturing that. And I think that really helps too, like understanding this is such a weird offside thing, but it does remind me of when I was giving birth. And my doctor was telling me to push. And I was like, I am pushing. I thought I was pushing. And I said, could I have the mirror? And she put that mirror right there. And I was like, bam. And I pushed that baby out because I could see what I was supposed to be doing, and I could like not just envision, like I couldn't. I was envisioning it. I could see it. And so I think what you're saying about understanding how these things work and that it can make a difference. You can picture it. And I think that's just got to help, right?
Yeah. And one thing that I hear a lot, and actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I definitely have heard this more frequently, in the last year or so than other years. But I hear this phrase from people with MS where they'll tell me, I've been doing program X, Y, and Z, and I'm getting stronger, but my walking isn't any easier. Or I'm getting stronger, but stairs are just so damn hard. Or I'm getting stronger, but getting in the cars, so they feel like they're getting stronger. They feel like they're getting balanced, but there's not that carryover into their day-to-day life. So their function is still difficult for them. And my whole thing is I want you to get stronger so that your walking is easier or so that your day-to-day activities
enhance your life
challenging. Absolutely. So there's a difference. And so that's what we review in the 5-day strength challenges, how to make that connection, how to get that overlap. And then in the MSing Link, all of the exercises are geared to get that overflow so that yes, you improve strength, but also your function is improving
for a reason.
Yes. Right. Because truly, like, it's great. It's great to be strong, but if that doesn't mean you can do any more things or live any more of a freer lifestyle, well, then I don't know how good is it?
Yeah. How much posing are we going to do with our big, strong muscles? So how do people find you and your program?
Well, so many places. My podcast is the newest way that you can find me. My program is on my website, MSingLink.com, and it's spelled MSing Link. I'm also on YouTube as Dr. Gretchen Hawley, Facebook as Dr. Gretchen Hawley, and we also have a Facebook group called MS Wellness and Support. And then I'm on Instagram as Dr.Gretchen.
You're everywhere. You're everywhere. And just so everybody knows, that will all be in the show notes. So don't drive off the road trying to write this stuff down. I got you. So that's also excellent, Dr. Gretchen. I learn something every time I talk to you. Thank you so much for coming back for a third time. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure you remember this part where we in the FUMS Nation speak to this stupid disease as it deserves. And we tell it FUMS every day. So if you wouldn't mind, would you please lead us in our salute to MS with middle fingers extended, of course. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
FUMS.
Yay! That was a good one. Appreciate it. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Quick shout out to Steve Woodward at podcastingeditor.com for the fantastic work on this podcast, including editing, show notes, and ingenious ideas. If you'd like help with your podcast, whether you're just starting out or an old pro, visit podcastingeditor.com and tell Steve I sent you. Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate you listening to the FUMS podcast show. Be sure to subscribe to it so you won't miss an episode. You can do that right on the website at FUMSnow.com. While you're there, sign up for the free email list so you'll be among the first to know of any new findings in MS research, new therapies and products, as well as any blog posts and podcast episodes I release. Want to chat with others in the FUMS community? Join us on Facebook at FUMS Now. Thanks again, and don't forget to talk to the stupid disease as it deserves. Tell it FUMS every day.